That plate of pasta, a story by Ciro Discepolo. Sitting with his knees up and the sun in his face, Stefano couldn't help but stare at her. She was truly a sight to behold, with her young tan body, the light casting 1,000 reflections on her wet skin, that black swimsuit the same color as her eyes and hair. Lying on her back with her eyes closed, she seemed to mentally invite the sun to warm her, burn her, with its invigorating flames. What a shame, the man thought, that after so much work there should be only crumbs of pleasure. And summer, the sea, Sandra, Capri, the Faraglioni were, for him, that pleasure, but also a good plate of pasta the way he knew how to cook it. "Today I'll make you linguine with clams. You'll see, it's out of this world," he said to the girl. "Is it possible that all you can think about—" "Well, not just that. You see, a few years ago I rediscovered my body, and now I can enjoy so many things that used to pass before my eyes without interest. I enjoy the feeling of the sea air blowing downwind, the immediate refreshment when I dive in, and then the warmth of the sun warming me, but also the thought of a beautiful July day like today, of relaxation of everything, in short. Are you saying you've become an epicure? Maybe, but it's not exact. I don't know if there's ever been a philosophical thought that can fully reflect this way of being of mine. It's true that I'm an Epicurean when I enjoy or try to enjoy everything, but I could also adopt the Roman saying, carpe diem, seize the day, to indicate this willingness to take everything that comes my way moment by moment. But there's more. You see, I also love to prolong pleasure through waiting. For this reason, when we're at the seaside like today, I prefer not to have lunch, but to savor, prolonging it, the desire for a good dinner that I'm starting to think about right now. Perhaps, by approximation, the Kama Sutra or some other school of Eastern thought can come close to my way of feeling today, enjoying by prolonging the wait, without rushing, expanding with imagination, the final pleasure that is voluntarily delayed. "How complicated you are," said Sandra, turning to Tan from behind. "I'm more direct. When I like something, I do it without thinking too much about it." "It must be because you're so young," replied Stefano, who meanwhile was enjoying the enchanting view of the Faraglioni, of all the cliffs overlooking the sea at Lido Luigi, of the numerous seagulls there, and even of the support vessel for the tourist submarine that departs from there for excursions to the seabed. I used to do it that way too. Now, as I approach 40, I've learned to play chess with life, to use a bit of strategy. I've realized that pleasure is amplified by the brain even before the senses. Eating with the help of imagination can give you much more pleasure than a voracious binge, just as refined eroticism can give you 1,000 times more excitement than a relationship governed only by burning passion. "And getting down to business?" asked the girl, whose constant movement betrayed a certain interest in these discussions. "This special evening you're announcing to me, what time does it start? And after all this publicity you're making, will you be up to the task?" Stefano smiled. That's why he liked her, because she was also charming as well as charming. Now she was turning around, shaking her rather large breasts under her low-cut swimsuit. "I'm going to dive back in. Are you coming?" Sandra asked again. They headed toward the rocks. Later they made their way back up, taking short steps, stopping every few meters, along the pine forest of the Faraglioni. Then they crossed Via Tragara and Via Camerel, passing by the restaurants with outdoor tables. Strong aromas of pasta and fish wafted to their noses, increasing their desire for that announced plate of pasta. They stopped at a bar for a drink, and Stefano said, "A day just the way I want it. If it weren't for that phone call, I'm waiting for a call from Rome. It's a work-related matter, important. It could decide my vacation." I gave them the number of Gianni's little apartment where we're staying in Capri. They should call me this evening, hopefully before dinner. From the piazzetta, always crowded with tourists of all ranks and social classes, colorful in their skin tones and clothing, they passed via Tiberio and here in front of La Capanina, another temple of island gastronomy. Then, at the highest point of the narrow street named after the Roman emperor who rightfully made the island his permanent residence, they entered the front door of Gianni's house, who had given them the keys to his golden refuge for 2 days. They entered the living room/kitchen and dropped off their beach bag. "Make yourself comfortable, or rather, lie down on the bed in the other room," said the man who, following the directive of the mayor, nicknamed Federico II, had kept an open shirt over his swimming trunks through the island's streets, even though he would have preferred to go bare-chested. "Now I'll reveal my secrets for a special pasta dish," Stefano continued, without raising his voice, given the small spaces they were moving through. "First the aperitif, some excellent falanghina from Campi Flegrei, which I chilled this morning before going to the beach. Here, drink. There's nothing better than a glass of very cold white wine to stimulate an already strong appetite." The girl also drank slowly, sitting up a little in bed and savoring the delicious fragrant wine. "And now let's get to work. You continue resting. I'll do everything. First the pot, nice and big and full of water. 2 generous handfuls of double-boiled salt and plenty of heat underneath. Here. Now the pan, which also needs to be quite large. The oil, extra virgin olive oil, a generous finger's worth, since it will absorb some of it later." Stefano proceeded with dedication and pleasure, occasionally glancing at his phone. "Let's hope they don't call while we're having dinner. Now the clams. They need to be washed thoroughly. Look how beautiful they are, quite large. Some American relatives of mine who came to visit me last year said that in California there are gigantic clams, as if capons were tastier than cockerels. Americans are good at many things, but for pasta they have to be reserved. Here, after draining them, add them to the pan over low heat, together with the fresh cherry tomatoes, cut into small pieces, and a lot of very finely chopped parsley. I add fine salt to taste, and an optional clove of garlic, which I remove after a while. Meanwhile, Sandra had stood up and put on a very sexy pink cotton bodysuit. Stefano admired her beautiful legs and couldn't help but put his arm around her as she passed him. He kissed her on the neck, at the corner of her right ear. Their skin still tasted of sea salt. They hugged and kissed for a long time. This was part of the magic of summer. Everything is more beautiful in summer, the man thought, as he pulled away from his companion with some difficulty to get back to work, not without casting another slightly anxious glance at the phone. This wonderful day would have been perfect if it weren't for that worry. Work is important, and that phone call had to come if he didn't want to ruin his summer. Another sip of wine. He took it from the table where he had meanwhile set the table with the essentials, but he thought about the phone again. "Yes," said the girl, "but after that masterpiece of a first course, what will you give me to eat?" "No problem," replied the man. "I bought some pan-fried peppers, and there's some buffalo mozzarella and ham, but the important thing is the pasta. Can you imagine the difference?" Sandra sat at the table, cross-legged across the chair. She was munching on a taralluccio with fennel, a typical Capri biscuit, and looked at him with a smile and a beautiful light in her eyes. "Now let's move on to the final stage. Don't distract me. Here you have to crush the cherry tomatoes just enough and let the sauce and oil penetrate the clams. Watch how they open. Someone is removing the shells, but they don't understand anything. Can you smell the aroma? Help yourself, make a little soup with the bread. Another drop of wine, but don't get drunk. Please keep putting the wine back in the fridge, otherwise it gets hot. You have to stir the pan constantly. Now the linguine." "Why linguine and not spaghetti?" his wife asked. "Because linguine holds its shape better, and because their flat texture allows the sauce to stick better, wrapping itself around them. And taste the flavor! We Italians have the best pasta in the world. Linguine, size 18, 10 minutes. It says on the package, but I cook it for 8 minutes because I prefer it very al dente." He poured the pasta into the boiling pot and looked longingly again at the woman, who, smiling, continued nibbling on her tarallucci. He glanced at his phone again. He also put on some good music in the background. "Now I'll teach you another secret," continued Stefano. "Place the 2 soup plates next to the stove to heat them well. Otherwise, if they're cold, the pasta will taste bad. When you're at a restaurant, to avoid this inconvenience, ask for the linguine al cartoccio, that is cooked in the oven in aluminum foil. They retain all the heat, and you can enjoy them as if you had just removed them from the pan. Now let's put a little chili pepper on the plate, as much as you like. Get ready, the moment is approaching. You'll have noticed that I didn't throw in too much pasta. This is also an important detail for making a great first course. The quantity should never be too much, because if you still have a little craving for it, then you enjoy it more. Of course, this is subjective, but this is my advice. It's the attention to detail that earns you a solid A+. A foodie friend of mine who was invited to dinner by a mutual acquaintance was able to find 11 mistakes in her first course. Stefano tasted a linguine, lifting it from the fork with his fingers, and declared it cooked just right. He then poured the contents of the pot into the colander, drained off any remaining water, and then tossed the linguine into the pan, which continued to simmer. He tossed everything around, mixing the tomatoes with the pasta, oil, and parsley. Then he poured it onto 2 plates, a superb sight. With the 2 steaming plates in his hands, he walked to the table. A powerful aroma filled the room. The phone rang. He hesitated. "If they want, they'll call back," said Stefano, sitting down and beginning to eat with great pleasure.